God, you're good and you always provide. You know what's best for us, and you give us tremendous hope. And I pray that you would fill this room with your Spirit, that you would speak through me, and that you would just really give us hearts for you and your message, and I know that you take care of us, and I know that you have awesome things in store. Amen. Okay. I started coming to camp in 2002, and I've been trying to remember the last time I have been to camp, or I came to camp. I think it was around 2008. So coming back is awesome. Camp has always had a special place in my heart. It's one of those times in my life where I can look back, and without a doubt, I can see that time in my life that really changed the trajectory of who I'm going to be. It was one of those pivotal moments in my life where I learned about God. I learned about His people. That was one of the things that impressed me the most about following Christ is I wanted to be like the leaders in our community. I loved the way that they treated their friends and their family, and I just saw what their life represented. Today I'm going to talk about higher hope. And I really hope this will allow you to catch a vision for what your life can be like. I think we live lives that are just caught in the current of society. That we just kind of move along, whatever feels good, whatever seems right, whatever's easier, whatever's comfortable. And I think the higher hope that God calls us to is something that will last. I think about the kid that came to camp a long time ago, and I think about what he believed and what was important to him and what his views were, and I think about how different that person was from who I am now. That God has revealed some pretty awesome things to me. But I think the thing that is constant in that kid and the person now is just a commitment. A commitment to God and a commitment to God that He will lead me. I've failed and I've messed up, but I think God has really taught me some awesome things. I'm going to speak for all the adults in the room for a second. And I would just tell you guys that we are less concerned with the person you are now and more concerned with the person you're becoming. That right now you don't have to have it all figured out. We look at you guys and what we see is God being able to change your heart through your commitment. We're more concerned with the type of person you're going to be when you're up in your years, when you have families. And I would just ask you guys to think about when you get up in your years and you're retired and you've got generations behind you, what will you have lived for? What legacy will you leave behind? Our hope is that through you guys, hundreds, if not thousands of people will know Jesus because of you and the decisions you make. You don't have to have it all figured out now, but you do have to have the faith that this whole God thing is true. Trust that it's true. You'll probably never figure it out. You'll never figure it all out. And God didn't intend it to be that way. God didn't want us to have it all figured out. He wanted us to trust Him. Trust that He's got it, that He's under control. I'll tell you a little bit about me. I grew up in the Plano area, and I came from a Christian home, and we were pretty close, and there was a lot of comfortable things in my life. I've lived a pretty charmed life and had a lot of neat experiences and opportunities, and I think my teenage years were pretty typical, and I think that's good and bad. Sports were a really big part of my life. I enjoyed sports. They were kind of my thing. I enjoyed getting better. I liked studying athletes and learning about them and figuring out how I could be just better. And I love practicing, and I'm kind of like that now with different hobbies I pick up. My junior and senior year, I picked up golf, and golf was a big part of my life. I spent hours and hours at the driving range, and I thought, hey, this golf thing, I kind of like it. I think I want to pursue a career in it. So I went and researched some schools, and both my parents went to New Mexico State University, and they had a golf program that I was interested in. So I visited, and I liked it, and I applied, and I got in, and my plans were kind of set. I was excited, ready to go. And then I know God came along and kind of shot holes in my plan. Thank God he did that. I heard Cale say one time that our world longs for people of conviction. We long for people of conviction. Bree referenced the scripture this morning. The Hebrew writer just says, we have this hope as an anchor for the soul. Any kind of conviction I saw in my teen years was pretty selfish. And there was no anchor. If they were convicted, it was convicted about getting into a fancy college or excelling in their academics. Or worse, there was a steadfastness to do whatever was fun or felt good. They weren't anchored to anything. I think it was rare to find any kind of conviction that went beyond themselves. It was all about them. Their hope was in them. So if they bombed a test, it was over for them. If they did poor in a game, it was over for them. Their hope was bottled up in their own talents and efforts. It was all about what they could achieve. I had a good buddy that a lot of you guys know, Casey. And he came into my life at a perfect time. There were two things that really drew me to Casey. One was he was my buddy. We got along. We had a lot in common. We had fun together, laughed together. But the second thing, and the thing that's much more important, is Casey was a guy of conviction. He was a guy that lived for something bigger than himself. He had something he was anchored in, and it was obvious. Casey carried a Bible in his back pocket. Casey had a sticker on his car that said, "Real men love Jesus." He's probably embarrassed about that. I remember Casey talking to our coach, and he convinced our coach to let him skip a game. This is our high school game, a high school team, skip a game so he could go to youth group. And that's just the kind of guy he was. And so I was drawn to that. And because nobody else really had that. It was pretty rare. It was pretty rare to see that. He reached out to me, and I studied with him and John, and I was challenged and just reflecting about what my life was all about. Tell me what your life was all about. And it wasn't about much. I had no anchor. All of my hopes were just wishes. Bree talked about that this morning. The world's hopes are all wishes. They're not expectations. And that's all my hopes were. I hope to have a good job. I hope to get to college and have a wife and kids. Those were just kind of wishes. Those were the things that I thought would be cool. I was taught that life was bigger than me. And more than that, and this is great news, that life isn't about me anymore. It's just not about me. that life is about doing exactly what Casey did for me and calling people to a higher hope. And that's what my hope was, that I could live that life, to call people to this life. And so I found that hope, and it was certain. It was certain. And God has blown my mind. The things that I imagined would happen when I devoted my life to Christ have been so different. He's given me a beautiful wife that loves God and is really my biggest fan. I have a little daughter that is just the sweetest thing ever. But guys, the thing is even if those things were taken away from me, I would still have hope.
Yeah. Sure.
The hope that God provides isn't defined by circumstances. I'll say that again. The hope that God provides isn't defined by circumstances. My hope isn't defined in whether things are going well. My hope isn't defined in a bad day. It's not defined in a good day. My hopes don't come crashing down if I fail a test or, God forbid, somebody's taken away from me. All I have to do is know that God's in charge and have faith that He knows all. That I'm not always going to be happy. That things aren't always going to make sense. That sometimes things are going to hurt and I'm going to be sad and I'm going to be depressed. But that doesn't mean my hope falters at all. I have to trust, as Paul says in Romans, that in all things He works out for the good of those who love Him. Do you trust that? Do you really trust that? Because it's hard to trust that. It's hard to trust that He really has your best life in mind. But things won't always make sense. We're going to be made new. God is making things new, and He's got a plan to fix it all. God's bringing His kingdom here. He will bring His kingdom here fully, and He's already started bringing His kingdom here. We're experiencing His kingdom this week. So trust in a God that can give you that passion. It's not about us. It's that I can live for something bigger than myself. And it's not about me. And I trust that you, or I hope that will be on your hearts. I beg that God would take you on that journey. Let Him open your eyes to the kingdom. It's not going to be easy. You won't always be happy or comfortable. But trust in that God. Let me pray. God, You're good. I know You love us. And I know You've given us a hope that will last. Help us be people that hold on to that hope and call people to that same hope. Amen.
Sitting over there, and I noticed poor Katie's getting a sunburn up here. We were just talking. Cool. I'm going to start off. Y'all can get that scripture ready. I'll get out of the way. I'm going to start off with a verse, and then I'll share some thoughts. I'm going to stop like halfway through it, and then share a little bit and keep going. So this is the story of the lost son. You might recognize it's the story of the prodigal son. We're going to read through all of it. So then he said, and it's Jesus talking, there was once a man who had two sons. The younger said to his father, Father, I want right now what's coming to me. So the father divided the property between them. It wasn't long before the younger son packed his bags and left for a distant country. There, undisciplined and dissipated, he wasted everything he had. After he had gone through all his money, there was a bad famine all through the country, and he began to hurt. He signed off the citizen there who assigned him to his fields to slaughter pigs. He was so hungry, he would have eaten the corn cobs and the pig slop, but no one would give him any. That brought him to his senses. He said, all those farm hands working for my father sit down to 3 meals a day, and here I am starving to death. I'm going back to my father. I'll say to him, Father, I've sinned against God. I've sinned before you. I don't deserve to be called your son. Take me on as a hired hand. He got right up and went home to his father. When he was still a long way off, his father saw him, his heart pounding. He ran out, embraced him, and kissed him. The son started his speech, Father, I've sinned against God. I've sinned before you. I don't deserve to be called your son ever again. But when the father was listening, but the father wasn't listening. He was calling to the servants, quick, bring a clean set of clothes and dress him. Put the family ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Then get a grain-fed heifer and roast it. We're going to feast. We're going to have a wonderful time. My son is here, given up for dead and now alive, given up for lost and now found. And they began to have a wonderful time. So we'll stop for a minute and get to that part. I got to go talk at Whiteley Prep a few years ago. And I think I don't even know if I had a prompt given to me, I can't remember now. But I just was talking a little bit about just the testimonies we have. And that's kind of what Tyler and I were asked to do tonight. Tyler's not over there. So I was just up there talking and just talking to these kids. And this is a private school with mostly church kids and probably pretty similar stories to what I had. And I was remembering back to whenever we had guest speakers come in to the churches I grew up in and stuff it's like these people who they just got out of jail and they used to sell drugs and they killed someone and all this stuff, these bizarre, crazy testimonies where God totally changed them and they're different. And I'm like, well, I always went to church and still go to church, and kind of felt like that was just not impressive, not a big deal. We got to hear a story last night of Matt, a young man who was here and then thought he saw something better over there and went and did that and realized it was just a smoke screen and came back. And that's similar to the story we just looked at. I can relate more to the older brother, and we're about to hear his side of the story, kind of see his perspective. So I'll read that to you and then kind of give you some thoughts on that and more on that. So all that's going on, while that's happening, the older brother is out working. He says, all this time his older son was out in the field. When the day's work was done, he came in. As he approached the house, he heard the music and dancing. Calling over one of the houseboys, he asked what was going on. He told him, your brother came home. Your father has ordered a feast, barbecue beef. So then a whole lot of so they ate pretty good because he was home. Right. The older brother stalked off in an angry sulk and refused to join in. His father came out and tried to talk to him, but he wouldn't listen. The son said, look how many years I've stayed here serving you. I'm never giving you one moment of grief, but have you ever thrown a party for me and my friends? Then this son of yours who has thrown away your money on whores shows up and you go all out for the feast. His father said, son, you don't understand. You're with me all the time. And everything that is mine is yours. But this is a wonderful time, and we have to celebrate. This brother of yours is dead and he's alive. He was lost and he's found. So I feel like there's kind of two groups of people here and in the church, probably in general. It's just people who are out in the world and got saved and came back from that. And then we got the church kids who grew up there. We can all kind of relate to one of those stories. Some of you were in one group, did the worldly deal and you've come back from that. Or maybe you're considering coming back out of that in some ways. And the rest of you, are church kids. You grew up a church kid and you've avoided some of the worldly stuff, but you, like me and this older brother, you've had to get over some other things in your heart, overcome some other stuff. What I see in that older brother and in me and in my life, a lot of the times growing up, is just, I had some heart issues to work on. I was judgmental of others, whether they were other Christians that didn't think the same way or do the same type of church that I did, or non-Christians. At times I was hard-hearted. And then there's times where, I thought I knew better, than God. Like, this young man knew better than his father. If you read that whole chapter, you see Jesus telling 3 different stories. You see him first telling the story of the lost sheep, where, this shepherd representing God leaves 99 sheep that are safe and sound to go out and find the lost one sheep. You see that this is a God who seeks and saves the lost. And then you see the next story, the parable of the lost coin, where there's a lady who's lost the coin somewhere in her house, and she's overturning everything to find it. When she finds it, she goes around telling her neighbors she found her coin. It's interesting to me, you have to kind of take coin out, because I think quarter or penny or something. This is probably a much larger chunk of valuable money. I don't know if I say it. But it's worth more. I don't like looking at it. There's no longer anything there, and I no longer need to be. But this is worth more than a quarter. This is probably a day's wage or a week's wage. Think about if Brittany and I lost a day's worth of our money, that's hundreds of dollars. So think about that when you think about what she's doing in that story. That's what God does, is he searches for us. When it's talking about that money, that's something precious and valuable. God searches for us like we're something precious and valuable. And he goes around celebrating when he finds us. And then you have this parable of the lost son, where there's a son who's gone out and done the worldly deal and comes back. And you have God who welcomes lost people back. He looks for those people. He searches for them. That father has been scanning the horizon, watching for his son to come home. So that's, it's hard to be hard-hearted when you realize that that's a God like that, who's looking for people, who's searching for people, who's celebrating for people, whether they're church kids or whether they're worldly kids, the God who loves them both. So the next thing I want to do is just kind of walk you through a little bit of my story, my testimony, which is like what I said we were asked to kind of prepare. So what I'm going to do is intertwine some points and lessons just throughout that. So just starting off, I grew up in Wiley. That's where I spent most of my childhood and teen years. So I grew up in Wiley. We grew up going to church. We were always involved in church. My parents were very involved and had us there, on Sunday mornings. Every week there was some sort of Sunday night service. We were doing that. And then as we got older, on Wednesday nights we were doing youth group, or when we were younger, kids stuff. Whatever was going on, we were doing it. We were very involved. We were there on Thursday. The lesson I learned in my childhood is just that being involved in church and committed to church is very important. And I learned that lesson from my parents. And then in my teen years, I was a pretty good kid. Again, still doing the church deal. I avoided the big ones, the drugs and the drinking and partying stuff. I wasn't doing that, mostly because I was scared of my parents. So my mom was crazy mean. So, I was just really scared. But I realize now, looking back, that I wasn't good because I wanted to please God. Yeah. Or be like Jesus. I was good, because I wanted to stay out of trouble. I was good at avoiding bad stuff, but I failed at pursuing righteousness and doing my best for God. In my teen years, I stayed involved in youth group, and I kind of had a couple different youth group experiences. In junior high, I had a pretty crummy youth group experience. I don't think I've told my parents many of these stories that I'm about to share, so it's not really me doing bad stuff, it's just youth group. And so we went on this ski trip, and I was, in junior high, I was in 8th grade, and I observed on this ski trip, I really didn't take part in this stuff. But there was, I remember we stopped at a stop, and kids were stealing cigarettes. Back then it wasn't the deal, so there was they were swiping them and taking it, and they would sneak out every night and go do stuff. And all the high school kids, because they were cool, would go smoke in the hot tub, and then that was super cool. And so then I remember the whole trip up, there was this couple like making out in the van. Like the youth pastor's like 2 rows ahead of me. Like the whole time I'm like, you don't see this? I'm like 2 or 3 years younger than them. I'm like, what am I going to do? I'm like, so, I'm like, it was just really not, a spiritual trip. Like it was not like coming to teen camp here. And then there was probably lots of other stuff. And then high school got a little bit better. We went to a different youth group. But this was a bigger church. It was kind of a church that wanted to build a big church and have a big teen ministry and do the cool deal and kind of be the cool youth group in town. There wasn't, one-on-one mentoring going on. There wasn't youth workers who were trying to like, hey, you want to spend time together? Teach me to be like Jesus. Like that wasn't going on. That wasn't offered to me. That wasn't existing in that youth group. So in these years, in my high school years, I kind of became a lot more like that older brother. I was the Christian who my church was doing things right. And I remember one time I got in like an argument with this girl. I think she went to a Methodist church or a Presbyterian church. And like I was right, she was wrong. I don't even know why. We were just arguing. We were like arguing. I was like, why? I don't even know. I don't even know what I said. I can't remember. I need to go apologize to her. I still remember who it was. Her name's Ellen. I'm gonna look her up. But I felt better than other Christians. This goes back to the judgmental and hard-heartedness I pointed out. I felt better than other Christians, and I felt a lot better than lost people. Some lessons I learned in these years, my teen years, just looking back, is one that God loves everyone. And there's tremendous hope in that. We have this hope that God saves lost people. And God can do that in spite of Christians like me in my teen years who weren't helping them do that. And the second thing is just that the best kind of youth group is the one I didn't have. One where youth workers are getting involved in teens' lives, where they're seeking out one-on-one time with them, where they're trying to study the Bible with them and just be a part of their life. I didn't get that, but that's okay. I can do that now. So all right, moving on to my college years. Tyler talked about being really involved in golf, and I know a lot of you have some dreams and expectations now, just some, just hopes for your future. And I don't really remember having that. Mom and Dad, did I have I want to be a fireman when I grow up or anything like that? No. I just didn't have it. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know what I wanted to be. I didn't know where I wanted to go to school. After high school, I almost just kind of took that first year off of college, and I just didn't know what I wanted to do. I ended up going and being that kid who has to stand in a 2-hour line to be told all the classes he ended up wanting to take are full already. And so some of you have experienced that. That was when I finally decided, okay, I'll go to community college. And so I started off at Collin. I did that for a few years. Decided I should probably go get involved in the campus ministry and try out a few different ones. Mostly because they offered free pizza on Wednesdays. It's like, all right, I'm going to ministry and I get food. So I was doing that. I bounced around a few of those. I went to, I don't want to talk negative about this, but I had some, a good experience, but there wasn't anything impacting. I ended up, because a girl invited me to Focus, ended up going to Focus. None of you know her. I think Tyler and Kate, they're both raising their hands. So they know that story, and they're not going to tell you that story. But she invited me. I was like, okay, I'll go. So this is probably the first time Brittany's hearing that. And so, yeah. So, huh? Yes. But anyway, so I went to let's get back on track. I went around to a few different campus ministries and just really wasn't finding anything that was meaningful to me. I ended up going to Focus, and I think just thinking back on my college years, I said one time, I was talking with the junior high group or something, and Ronnie was there, and he just said something like, there's probably, lots of good campus ministries out there, and something like that. And he just kind of stopped me for a second and said, no, there's really not. Just really not much of that out there. There's a whole lot of campus ministries. There's dozens on most of the big campuses. But there's, if you look at just my experience, only 25% of them are life-impacting ministries. And it's probably a lot lower than that when you look at it nationwide. So I don't really know why I said that. But just, when you're looking at that, just really consider that heavily, if God's calling you to be in that focus. So yeah, eventually, from my perspective, kind of stumbled into Focus after being invited, and then eventually to Northeast. One semester, Brad Davis was using his core for several weeks to plan his sermon at Northeast, and then invited us. I decided to go, and that's kind of where I ended up staying. So, but he was using our time to plan his talk for weeks. Sorry. But through Focus and Northeast, I really learned about true friendships. Because I just didn't have that growing up. I had a few friends in high school, a few buddies. I don't keep in contact with any of them. I couldn't really tell you what any of them are doing. They just weren't very meaningful. And I got those in Focus. I learned what it was like to be a part of a healthy community. I got to study the Bible, so I ended up being Brad. But I did that reluctantly. Growing up in church, felt like I don't really need to study the Bible with anyone. I kind of had to figure it out, and just kind of realized there was just a whole lot I didn't know, and a whole lot that I knew wrong. And so that was really beneficial to me. And eventually got a chance to lead core groups and go get trained in ministry up in Washington, and then just through our ministry here. And then one summer, John offered me a summer internship with Next, and kind of fast forward 8 years later, and that's where I'm at. And so some lessons from my adult years are just that I've learned that true friendships always have Christ at the core. There's just a whole lot of people that I'm friends with that I wouldn't be friends with if it wasn't for Christ. I think one of them, one of the more meaningful ones, is probably me and Kale. Just we're very different. We don't think through things the same way. We sometimes butt heads just trying to talk about stuff and plan stuff. And
you make fun of me when I'm cranky.
Yeah. And when he mixes words together, it's just really weird. It just sounds dumb. But yeah, and I'm sure it's kind of a one-way street. Like, I've got it all figured out. But if Kale's going to stop me and say, Joseph, you got this wrong, or you did this, just think about something and look at what I'm doing. Like, he's someone I'll listen to. There's a whole lot of people like that in this room. But I'm just saying, like, friendships like that, Kale and I probably wouldn't be friends in the world. We probably wouldn't like each other. Anna got my joke.
I like you, but
I mean, maybe we would.
no, I really would.
Oh man. Okay, sorry. Man, I feel like a jerk. I love you, Kale. Because we really are friends. The other lesson I've learned is just that true communities and true churches are centered on God's love and helping one another become like Jesus. They're not centered on judging those outside of their group or church. So the last couple things here is just why I have hope now. I have hope because I know Jesus, and no person or circumstance, like Tyler talked about, can take that from me. If I'm staying committed to Him, then He won't let me down. And then now, just through my friendships and my church, that helps me to be hopeful. I can see Jesus in them and the way He's working in them, and it reminds me of what God's doing, that He's there. And I'm also hopeful when I'm here with you all. I get to see God make real changes in your lives and make real impacts. So yeah. That's it.